So the Claret and Blue View with Will Pugh is back. I'm delighted to say that joining me this week is actually James Jones for, I think, perhaps the first time this season. He isn't a guest on the podcast. He just figured he would stick around for this one. But actually joining us for the Claret and Blue View section is, and as I introduced him earlier on, his real name is Steve Hart, but I just know him as Jonesy's brother's mate, Steve, who listens to the podcast all the time. And fortunately, every time I see you, Steve, usually at an away game, and we're having a couple of beers with Jonesy and the gang, you normally make a point, and this is why I like you so much. I was so keen to get you on the pod, of going, I totally agree with what you were saying against Jonesy last week. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, there we go. No, thank you for having me, guys. I say I this season I'm quite mellow with my opinions so far, but I generally in seasons gone by I can be quite passionate about my thought process. Sometimes right, sometimes not, but I try.
Yeah, well, I mean, the last time I saw you, go on, Jonesy. Sorry,
I was going to say, me and you have come to blows quite a lot
100%.
over the years when it comes to West Ham.
You're very positive.
Like actual blows.
No, just verbal blows.
Verbal
James
blows,
is very positive, and I am sometimes perceived to be slightly negative, I guess.
Really?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Is that the dynamic in your friendship group then?
I mean, Steve is. I've always known Steve is just an incredibly negative West Ham fan. But maybe over the
I'm
last,
rational.
Yeah, maybe over the last year to 18 months, I've begun to think, well, maybe it's kind of, it comes across as negative, but actually it's just his passion coming through, and it's misplaced negativity rather than actual negativity.
Yeah. Well, look, that's what. Go on.
I know what I think from the start of something. So certain things we do, I'm like, I hate that idea, and often they can be wrong. As in Lingard and Dawson, I was like, what are we doing? Awful signings, and 2 weeks later, I'm like, Ballon Dawson, Lingardinho. So it's not. I definitely get it wrong as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think very similar to me saying James Ward-Prowse will never fit in at West Ham. Why on earth are we signing him? I feel your pain on that, Steve, to be quite honest.
I spent 4 years saying we should sign Ward-Prowse, and he got to this summer, and I was thinking 40 million, he's 30. We don't need him now. And then like 2 weeks later, I was like, I've always liked James Ward-Prowse. Brilliant.
Yeah, I spent quite a long time. The only reason I don't want to admit this too freely will soon become clear. I spent quite a long time, probably the same amount of time as you, saying we should sign Danny Ings. Yeah, now we've done that. I just regret that point somewhat.
There's always the little ones. We can't just go through a window where I'm like, brilliant, totally satisfied. This year probably is close to getting one. But then in January, I was like, Ings, for God, like maybe a loan where we can see, like, not 15 mil highest paid player. Now we're stuck with him forever. Like, there's always one of those, isn't there? That's just West Ham for you, I guess.
Exactly, mate. Look, Steve, I think you're going to be an excellent one for the Claret and You question that we'll ask at the end of this bit, which is basically like a speaker's corner bit. The floor will be yours for up to 2 minutes, however long you need, really, just to make either a point or put out an opinion that you hold dear to your heart. It might frustrate you. It might be something you love about West Ham. We've had passionate defences of the London Stadium so far on the Claret and Blue View, saying what a great arena it is and it gets too much stick. We've had obviously people sticking up for Moisey. We had a guy saying how he's a bit gutted that West Ham have never had an iconic alcohol sponsor on the front of their shirt, a la Carlsberg with Liverpool, Strongbow with Leeds, and Nuki Brownell with the Toon, and so on. So anything that you either find yourself saying in and amongst your mates, which I know includes Jonesy, and even no one listens, but anything you're passionate about, that will come later on. But first of all, the last time I saw you in person, Steve, was Prague.
Yeah.
And, you know, it would be remiss not to kick off with that. How did you define that whole experience? Because it's been really therapeutic for me, hearing how different it was for so many different people who were there.
Yeah, so I think the whole kind of European journey, I don't really pay too much attention about getting to a final till you're in a semi. And then Frankfurt came around, I was like, oh, we could do this. I think there were times, Seville away, we didn't look like we were going to get through that. Lyon with the red cards. And then you get to the semi-final. I thought, not to be too critical, we weren't great in the semi-final. And we somehow got there pretty comfortably without really doing much. So I don't going to kind of pretend I know a lot about Fiorentina, but I was like, it's a final. We can turn up for one game. We're going to be brilliant. Prague in general, the city was amazing. It felt like a 4-day stag do, to the point where I kind of forgot we were going to the game. It wasn't until we even got to the stadium outside, we were having a few drinks outside, until I kind of saw the pitch through kind of as you were walking out. I was like, we're here to watch West Ham. It was just, I had such a great time that even if I hadn't gone to the game, even if we hadn't won, it would have been a brilliant trip. It turned out to be one of the best couple of days of my life. It was the scenes afterwards. I think Jonesy, obviously, with your dad's 60th birthday on the same day, sitting with you and your brother, to win it in the way we did. I didn't feel like I really watched much of the game. It was more just kind of taking it all in. At one point, I'm looking up and Areola's spilling the ball over the line, and I'm like, "What the hell happened there?" I didn't even know they were attacking. So I can't say I kind of watched the game. I was just kind of in awe of all of it. And I think to win the way we did, when I was a lot of despair with Moyes, thinking the players aren't performing, thinking this season it's a bit of a write-off, and if we lose this game, we're losing Rice. Obviously, we did anyway, and Moyes will go. I think it was just the culmination of that season is everything that is to be a West Ham fan, I think.
Steve, obviously, we were there together, and you mentioned obviously we were sitting together as well. Did you really feel like this is the day? This is the day that this 40 or 50 year thing ends? Because I try and look back now. I'm looking back, and I try and think about how I was feeling in that day. And also, I want you to clear up a thing that Will doesn't believe is true, but I want you to clear something up in a minute for me as well. But I look back at that day, and you're right. It didn't really feel. It felt like a stag do more than going to the game. But I genuinely, I went into it going, "This is definitely going to happen." Like, this doesn't. You don't get 60,000 fans of one team gathered in one city if they're not there to celebrate at the end of it. Like, it was almost if like it had to happen, otherwise, like,
I didn't feel like Fiorentina were there. I didn't feel like we saw more than 20 Fiorentina fans the whole time we were there. I think you got in the stadium and it felt like a home game. It felt like everything that was corporate was West Ham. And then the game started, and it didn't feel like watching it was like a final. You kind of see the clips of Newcastle PSG, and you think the fans and the tackles, you almost imagine that is a West Ham final. Just, it didn't have that energy. I think both teams have kind of planned it a bit more comfortable. When we didn't concede that goal and went 1-up, I was like, this is ours. And then at 1-1, when he put it wide, I went, we're going to somehow ruin this. But then I think as soon we were right on the line for Bayern being played through. And it's a lot tighter in the replay than I remember it. I remember thinking, he's on here, like, he's through. And when it went in, I was just like, oh my gosh. But I also thought it was about the 70th minute, because that's how much attention I didn't have that focus of time. And then I think I said to someone, how long do you reckon's left? And they're like, about a minute. And I was like, I didn't even realise we were in stoppage time at that point. So it was, it was all a bit of a blur, but it felt appropriate. The way we won it, it wasn't vintage kind of West Ham in the final. Kind of, you think back to the Liverpool final where people were shattered, every player left everything on that pitch. I think Emerson was about the only one, if we'd lost the game, he would have come out with any real credit. But then none of that matters, does it, really, at the end of the day? We won, and that's what gets remembered.
No, quite. Just quickly, off the back of that, well, I've maintained that it was like a stag do. We had 4 days of heavy drinking, but on match day, and I want you to clear this up for me, because I'm
no, you've got to ask. No, it's got to be an open question. You can't put your point to him and then say, "Is this true?"
All right. How many beers do you think we drank on match day?
James in particular.
Bearing in mind, we started at 10 in the morning, went for breakfast.
Yeah,
we ended at 4 or 5 in the morning. So
yeah, I got in at 6 and we started at 10 with breakfast. I dread to think I was on gin and tonics, and there were certain times that I wasn't drinking them as quickly as everyone else. But there was no point where someone wasn't either drinking a beer or asking for a beer. There was no real cues. I dread to think how much we drank. I feel like I probably had 10 or 12 drinks post-game. So I dread to think how many were during the day.
So, mate, can you put a number on how many beers you think I drank from the first beer at 10 with breakfast to the last beer before we went back to the hotel at 4, 5 in the morning?
I'd be shocked if it wasn't 20 plus.
Thank you very much.
It's the most cringy bit of dick swinging that James does.
It's not a dick swinging contest. I just said I can't believe match day. It was that heavy that I must have had about between 20 and 30 beers, probably closer to the 30 mark, because of the length of time we were drinking.
and it stopped. It was interrupted where it'd be like, right, we're now going to the ground. Oh, we've got to the ground. We're having 2 beers at the ground before we go in. Oh, we're having a beer at half time. And there's 3 and you don't even realise you've had them. It was one of those days where there was no concept of time. I was thinking even if win, lose or draw, kind of like Liam, where we were kept in after, we're probably not going out. And then some of us walking in 6 a.m, just out of like a dark bar that we were all in. And you lost. Yeah, it was just one of those days where natural high just kept you going.
Yeah, Steve, I will be honest, and look, only because I like to take an opportunity to laugh at Jonesy when I can, and it just said, "Oh yeah, 30 pints the other day." Yeah, of course you did, mate. Yeah, but the main reason that makes me doubt him is because I went out, I agreed to meet him after the Sheffield United game the other day when I discovered that he'd gone to the game on his own. No, like all of the usual people he watches the home games with weren't there. They're all at the golf in Rome. And so he'd gone to the game on his own. I agreed to meet him afterwards for a couple of beers. We had, I think, 3 to 4 drinks together. And then he was the drunkest man I've ever seen in history and had to take himself off home. So I just find it a bit hard to believe.
Is the high of beating Sheffield United not the same as Prague for you, Jonesy?
Mate, I don't know what happened to me. I don't know what happened to me. It must have been something in the Stratford air that day because I was in a bad way.
Yeah, I just find it a bit difficult to think that the 3 drinks I had ever with him sent him over the edge. But he had 10 times more than that apparently in Prague. A day, to be fair, I did also see you in person. You did look a little bit worse for wear towards the end of the night, Jonesy. I will admit that. But look, Steve, obviously Prague was iconic memories. And before we get on to the other stuff about the current form and all that sort of thing, just give us a brief rundown of your sort of like West Ham journey is the best way I can think of describing it. We've had a wide variety of people living all over the world trying to support West Ham, but some people whose parents like mine passed it on to me. Some people just chose West Ham for some bizarre reason. How did you get into it? Have you experienced supporting West Ham from when you were a kid to where you are now, really?
Yeah, granddad and dad, season ticket holders. It was kind of forced upon me. I don't remember ever making a choice. Had a season ticket from, I think it was the 96-97 season, or at least started going at that point, maybe not the season ticket. First game I ever remember, I think we beat Sheffield Wednesday 4-1. I was there for that. I remember that very clearly. So then from that time onwards, had a season ticket from, I'd say, probably around 6 or 7 to 30. Still have the bond so I can kind of get away for the away games, but for my sins, don't have a season ticket currently. I kind of pick and choose the home games I go to. And that kind of happened, one, with not loving the stadium experience as much as I used to, and also so many games falling on a Sunday in the last few years. So as long as I allocate the bond ticket to myself, I can go to any home game I want, but it's not, I'm there for it. Watch every game. Away probably a couple of times a year, and then obviously with Europe, but it's kind of just been an experience that I didn't choose, but I've just kind of taken on and run with and love.
Just before Jonesy goes, sorry, James, how does it work? There'll be a lot of people listening, Steve. Obviously, the bondholders thing was a real contentious issue when it first came about in the 90s. My dad and granddad, along with many other West Ham fans, stopped going that season, sort of, in a rail against the board somewhat. I think you're the first sort of bondholder or family bondholder, or whatever it is, who I've sort of come across before. How does that work, or how did it work at the time? And have you or your dad or whatever ever had any grief off the back of it from other fans?
No, so this is my understanding. Obviously, I believe whether I was born or not, I definitely wasn't conscious about what was going on at the time. Again, don't quote me on this, but my understanding was they said it's mandatory to renew your season ticket. You've got to buy a bond, and I believe it was £1,000. And X amount, 300 people who kind of followed the corporate line, including my dad and granddad, said yes, purchase one. I think they wanted to do up one of the stands with the money. Everyone else went, absolutely no chance, ran on the pitch, said no. And then they kind of had to make the bond, the people that purchased the bond, I think there had to be an element of value to it. So it's 100 years, priority tickets for any game, home, away, cup, Europe, etc. So I think they kind of tried to enforce it upon everyone, and X amount of people at the time said yes, two of them being my dad and granddad. I believe it was £1,000 loan to the club, and you got £100 off your season ticket every year. so you'd get it back.
Right, okay.
But I believe that was what they were trying to do and make everyone stump up £1,000, which is a lot of money, but even in those times would have been far more. And yeah, didn't get a good response. But to me, I now have quite a valuable asset, I guess.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing to have now, no doubt. But you can't even imagine a football club doing that these days, can you? Sort of asking the fans to club together and lend them a few quid.
Well, they just sold our best players instead, later down the line, instead of asking for a bond. It's like, oh, Rio, cheers, thanks. You've just done up our stand instead. I don't know which is I prefer.
Yeah.
Steve, you mentioned in there that part of the reason why you don't go as often as you used to is the stadium sort of don't really quite like the match day experience. Is there anything in particular that you don't like? Because I know we've had this conversation quite a lot over the years since we moved. I'm now of the opinion that actually it's all right. It's got a lot better over the years. Right. It helps the fact that we're winning and we're doing well. We just won a trophy, and David Moyes has revitalised the club and the feeling around the club. But what is it that still isn't really to your liking? And also, what do you think the club should be looking to change about the stadium just to make it better, particularly on a match day?
It isn't even just a stadium. It is a stadium too. But when we used to go to Upton Park, you went to the same 2 or 3 pubs, depending on time of year. It was just kind of a religion, and it was I guess, habit. You didn't even think about, do I renew my season ticket? Do I go to this game? It was just kind of a routine thing that you did.
It's just really part of your life, isn't it?
Yeah, you didn't think twice. And then we went to Olympic Stadium and we tried the Carpenters, and I didn't like that. And we tried somewhere else, and it ended up like I'm drinking in a pub in Stratford High Road that's nothing to do with football, with half the people in there not feeling like West Ham. Going to the stadium, not feeling like I'm at a game, feeling like I can't see what's going on. I think my dad moved his season tickets a couple of times, and I just can't. It doesn't feel like I'm at anything other than like a concert. It feels like I'm just watching something that I enjoy watching, not I'm part of the West Ham experience I grew up with. And I still go, but there's times where a culmination. Sometimes the football's not been great. I remember I went to Brentford last year. I think we lost 2-0. I don't think we had a shot. It was a pretty awful game. It was a pretty awful day. Beard wasn't great, and I just went, I could have spent an hour and a half watching this on TV, and I've been doing it for so many years. It's kind of like it just gave me a chance to reset and say, how do I want to spend my weekends? And it's kind of more along those lines. It's not one particular thing. If they could move the seats a bit closer and kind of get that atmosphere, I think the away fans, the setup for them is atrocious. And I think if you could have a situation where the away fans could feel more involved in the game, it would help the atmosphere. I remember every time we play United at Upton Park, their fans, it felt like they had the whole stand. They were so loud, and it was like you'd hear them score, the goal goes in, and it was just the worst feeling in the world. But you had that feeling at a game. Now it's kind of just like they're tourists tacked miles away. You don't really hear them. You don't really feel like they're in the game. And I think if they could bring it all a bit closer, and I think they've sorted out a lot of the issues with the standing and people moaning and that side of things, but a little bit more of a football stadium would be nice. And I'd say the away fans are important in garnering an atmosphere for a game, and I just think they're just kind of nowhere near it. It's similar when we go to Newcastle, right? You're just up there. You don't feel like you're really there.
Yeah, I agree.
So
that, honestly, that I've never heard it put as well as that. The point you make there about you go, but you just feel like you're there to watch a performance, and that's exactly what it's like. I couldn't have put it better myself about that, where before you felt like you were part of it, didn't you?
Yeah.
Exactly that. You were sort of this one massive body, and like every single body and person in there was there, desperate for West Ham to win the game.
You felt you could influence the game, and I think we did at certain times.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that so much in the new place.
No, and I sort of find it, and look, I'm not saying people didn't leave early at Upton Park. Of course they did when we were getting humped 4-0. But typically, if we were drawing 1-1 at home to, like, you know, someone pretty like run of the mill, 1-1 at home to Crystal Palace, on a Saturday in the middle of winter, you'd maybe have like 10 people. And you could almost see them, because you could all see all the exits at Upton Park from certainly where I was sat in the stand upper. You could see the people leaving, and you'd be like, "What are they leaving at? We could get a winner here."
Even if we're 1-0 down, you're not going, right?
No, honestly, it really is like that. And I maybe I've sort of got a bit used to it since being there. But that is what it is. You're there and you want West Ham to win. But there's been a couple of occasions, and you know, look, I've sort of Dad's obviously we got the season tickets over in the Billy Bond stand still. I can't go as much, similar situation to you because of work and weekends and stuff like that on the reg. And when I do go every now and then, I get a hospitality ticket, which is nice.
Yeah.
But there are some times where you feel you care a lot more about West Ham winning the game than lots of people around you.
Yeah.
And it's very much like people have gone, oh, West Ham are at home Saturday. Should we do that, or should we go to the theatre, or should we go to the cinema? It's like it's something to do rather than a way of life. And I'm blown away by how well you've put that. I think that's exactly what it's
you go
like.
to Palace away and you're envious. You see like Goodison Park, I'm envious. Like I miss it. And I'm not saying that we should have stayed there forever or it was even possible, whether we could have expanded to kind of make that stadium feel a bit more like a football stadium, whether that is bringing them closer. But you've seen that Napoli commentator when they used to score the Higuain guy. They're miles from the pitch, but at least there's an atmosphere there. I can't quite put my finger on what we're missing, and it's definitely improving. And it's a work in progress, and it obviously wasn't going to be perfect. But I hope in time they can make it a little bit more like what it was, and everyone being together rather than just we're all watching something that we like.
I just think I think you have to lose something like that with that amount of people, especially at a club like West Ham. I just don't think there are enough people who are like diehard, hardcore, love West Ham with every fibre of their being. There's just not 60,000 of those. There's probably 35, 40,000, which you saw at Upton Park.
Yeah.
But then when you put those people in an arena like that with people who just, would quite like West Ham to win, but not enough that I'm going to stay for the last 10 minutes, even if they're drawing 1-1, could press for a winner if it means I get home an hour later. Right?
And they know that. They charge quite reasonable ticket prices, right, to attract those people that are on the fence about what they want to do on the Saturday or Sunday. So, I think it's getting there, but it's just not what it was. It just feels like something different to me.
Yeah. There was me, Jonesy, thinking that you were the sort of brightest, most illiterate one out of all your mates. Steve's made a point unlike any I've ever heard you make in the 5 years I think I've been sitting across from you talking West Ham.
And I'll tee him up for it as well. I can't believe it.
Well, let's Steve, current form then. Talk to, the sort of talking points we have been doing on this were initially Declan Rice, but I think that's been done now. I think everyone sort of feels the same. We're better without him. David Moyes is also another one. I was always sort of annoyed having to ask guests that every week because for me he's doing so well. But the Moyes one does still split fans a little bit more. So where do you stand on Moisey?
I think on Rice, first of all, I don't think we're better without him. I think we're different, right? If someone said, do you want the team you got today or do you want the team you got today with Declan Rice? I think every single fan would say we want Declan Rice. But I do think that in the short term, at least, with the sample size, we're a lot more unpredictable. I think there were times where you just watch whoever has the ball, Rice goes within 6 yards of them, collects it short, switch out to Kufau. Kufau brings it down, nothing on, goes back. 2 minutes later, he's back at Rice in the same spot, and we go again. Like you see at Arsenal, he's getting very close to players, kind of demanding the ball. It's like you're at a better team now, mate. Find a bit of space for yourself. I think now other players are having to step up. Souček, who I don't particularly love, I think his stats this season have been a little deceiving on his performances, but at least he's getting in the right areas and contributing again. Ward-Prowse seems like he's got kind of free reign to get forward as well. Alvarez, these like Ward-Prowse, Alvarez, and Souček are sharing the Rice load really well, I think. I was 60 minutes into the Bournemouth game, pretty content. They're not very good. Take the win first game of the season. I left that game going, God's sake, this is a joke. But I've been quietly very happy with how we've been doing since. I think in prior years, 25, 30% possession, especially last season, came with 1.5 chances a game. Not sustainable. It's coming with 5 or 6 at the moment. So as long as we can continue to create chances, I'm not going to get bent out of shape about how much we have the ball. I think we're hard to play against. A slight concern so far that when one goal goes in, it's 2, or when half time goes, another goal goes in as soon as we start. I think a little bit more concentration, but that will come. And if we can quietly go about our business, we don't need to have like the Brighton tag or the Newcastle tag with Spurs, with everyone looking over, oh, they're contenders. We can go along winning 2 out of 4, 2 out of 5 for the rest of the season, picking up a few draws and being in with a shout for the top 7 with 6 weeks to go in the season. I think we'll be very happy. Did 8 get Europe this year?
Depends on how well all of
our
teams do in Europe. Yeah.
Because I don't know how the coefficient works. Yeah. I'd assume with us winning the Conference League and City winning the Champions League, that must feed into that.
No, I think it's this season. So it's how well we do this season, I think.
Right,
so we sort of basically we want to be cheering on every English team in Europe this season, because the further everyone gets, the better it is for England next season. Yeah.
I think there's a weird situation where, dependent on who wins what trophies and who finishes where, you could have 9-10 teams in Europe one year. So I don't think there's still the same pressure to get top 6.
No,
I think
eight max, I think it is, yeah.
But I saw something where as well, like if you didn't finish in the top 6, but you won Europa Conference League, and then someone else who didn't finish in the top 6 won Europa League, and then you get the coefficient spot, it could end up with like a crazy setup where I don't think people going forward are dropping out of Europe anymore in the new format.
No.
So I don't think getting the top 6 will be the goal. I think it'll be getting top 8 will be the goal. And I think we're well equipped for that on a go forward. I don't think we're playing amazingly, but I don't think we need to play amazingly. I think we're doing exactly the right balance between picking up results and putting in a solid enough performance. Not convinced up top still. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I'm seeing they want to try Bowen as a striker. It's like, it's the same as, would Liverpool say, Salah, you go play up front, you best on the right wing. Like, and it'll be interesting to see what direction he goes in with getting Kudos in. I assume you've got to drop Souček or Antonio, one or the other. I can't see him dropping anyone else, right?
We've had that conversation already.
Yeah. It's two. They're two of his favourites, but I assume if you drop Souček, you may be pulling Paqueta back and stick someone who doesn't want to play left wing. If you drop Antonio,
it's too much meddling for me. For a good team to accommodate one good player, I think it's the wrong way to go about it.
I wouldn't be against us going Alvarez, Ward-Prowse, Paqueta on the left, Kudos in behind, Bowen on the right, Antonio up top, giving that a try. But I don't think we want to be moving Bowen off the left wing, and I don't think also off the right wing, and I don't think we want to be playing either him or Kudos up front. I think I've had enough of trying.
Paqueta's so good. I think moving him out the middle, I just think.
Yeah, do you know what? I do agree, but the only thing I would say is when he's been playing on the left, I don't feel like he is. I feel he's just kind of a bit everywhere. And I do like the connection. Yeah, he has with Emerson. I think that works quite nicely. I'm glad it's not my decision to make. It's typical us. We still don't have a striker, but we've got 2 players that probably should walk into our 11 playing the same position. So,
Steve, you briefly touched on it before about the style of play. Now, the club have come under, particularly after the Brighton game, come under a lot of criticism about the style of football under Moyes. Now, there's no doubt it's working. Last year, he tried moving away from it, tried to get us playing a little bit more football, get us on the ball a little bit, and it backfired in the league. What's your view on it? Because I'm of the view that I couldn't care less if we have 15% of possession every single game if we're winning football matches, because that's the whole point of football, isn't it? Winning football matches.
I never quite saw this thing that people were talking about. We tried to play more expensive. I was watching, and I didn't see us being particularly more expensive. I just saw us being pretty useless. So I don't think we tried
that as well. Yeah,
drastically different from the season before. If you look back to our season when we had Lingard in, we were a counter-attacking team with pace, and we got players close to the striker, whether that be Lingard. If we can get back to that, whether it is Kudos or another, Ward-Prowse has been doing it as well, making runs close to us. I don't really care what his setup is, and I don't know how much criticism he needs to take. I care when, at moments in the last few years, we've been very slow, build up, useless cross that's not aimed at anyone. It's just a ball into the box.
Just say it was Ben Rama. Just say it was Ben Rama.
It could be anyone. Kufau, who seems to have had like 4 assists in 4 games or so, he's now putting decent balls in.
Vladimir De Bruyne.
Well, and you'd look at it and go, whoever's playing up front, Haller, Antonio, Scamacca, they're no one near him. If they win the header, great, but they're not going to score from the ball that's been in. If they bring it down, there's no one to lay it off to. I'm just like, why are we like? You're all professional footballers. Please play a little bit more with some like intensity or creativity. So the chances we're creating this season are as good, I think, as the ones when we were back a few years ago, the Lingard year. So as long as we can continue to create, I'm happy with whatever terms they want to use, low block or blah, 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 whatever people say these days. I'm happy with us sitting deep and compact as long as when we go, we go. And I felt we were missing that last year, and it feels like that's coming back a bit now.
I don't want to repeat content on the podcast, but it was Declan Rice's Frank Lampard complex that was holding us back last year, reckoning he was this really talented attacking midfield player, not content with just doing the job he is world class at, i.e. for England. And I know he budges a little bit forward with Arsenal now, but he's not a Frank Lampard, is he? Football's moved on from there now. You don't really have CMs anymore, do you? You're sort of a CDM or a CAM. James Ward-Prowse is arguably railing against that a little bit, but I just thought it was the Declan Rice thing that was the cause of a lot of our problems.
I don't think he was quite as good in as often. I think even the games he wasn't great last year. I think it was Villa away. He was about 4 out of 10 first half, but then was still our best player in the second half by a country mile. I don't want to get too much on the criticism of Rice because I think Souček doesn't really offer much. I think even at the weekend, right, he scored. I saw it half time, it pops up. He's had 9 touches, 1's a goal. He's had 8 passes. He's made 3 out of 8 and he's playing centre midfield. I'm like, he is a bit of a passenger, right? So obviously they said, Rice, you can go further forward. Souček, you drop back. Now Souček's offering nothing for a year. But I'm hesitant to criticise Rice because I despise the fact he's gone to Arsenal. I despise the fact Mikel Arteta is the best thing he's ever seen in his life. I hate their fans with a burning passion, but I don't want to turn around and start saying Rice wasn't great for us because he was, wasn't he? The only issue I had with him last year was I felt he was a bit petulant as a captain at times, flailing his arms around and wasn't being a leader that we were expecting. I think he was a bit me. And if we're in a relegation battle and you're going around Arteta's for a cup of tea on a Tuesday night, get out my club anyway.
Makes sense. I don't disagree.
Arsenal have taught him how to play football, though, Steve.
Never seen anything like it, has he? Weirdo. Absolute weirdo. And he's always been a weirdo, but he was our weirdo, so we allowed it. Now he's not he's a freak, but it's just, he's amazing, and he's one of our best ever players, so fine.
Yeah.
Don't be weird over there. I just want to stop seeing it. It's on Twitter. You can't search West Ham without seeing 600 posts about Declan Rice. I'm just like, please, just leave us alone, mate. And then you get
the worst thing about it. The worst thing about it was after their win against City at the weekend, as an Arsenal fan pops up on my Twitter feed, I've been posting a video of Rice clapping the Arsenal fans after the game. And he was like, Declan Rice, no words. And it was like, mate, all he's doing is clapping the fans after you've just won a game of football.
They are the worst. I don't think they're real, some of them.
Yeah.
Half of my Arsenal mates don't really like football that much. The other half are all right and they know what they're talking about. Then there's like these people that just exist online. I'm like, are you real people? With some of the words they use, like, oh, Ramsdale, elite distribution, stuff like a Saliba season. I'm like, what? Grow up, you weirdos. Like, I can't take them seriously. They do me nothing. You've got me on one here. I hate them so much.
Josie, I know I don't need to tell you to clip that up.
It's going online. Yeah. That is
it could have gone anywhere. Any other team in the world, I would have been fired. Go United, go Liverpool, go Bayern, go Chelsea. I would rather he went Chelsea. That team, that manager, them fans, they do me nothing. Triggered, didn't I?
Yeah, I would say so, Steve.
Wow.
Yeah. Look, Steve, I mean, that, to be fair in itself, was one of the finest exhibitions of delivering a football take in the history, not only of this podcast, but in football content generally. So I can't wait what you've got to offer for Speaker's Corner. Claret Blue, actually, the Heineken's PR executive gave us that. Cheers to Joey Brophy, West Ham fan, who come on a couple of weeks ago, and I was struggling with the name for this bit. So this is Claret and You, where you get to another, I say max 2 minutes, but if it's as enjoyable as the stuff we've heard from you so far, Steve, you can take as long as you like, quite honestly. But yeah, anything you like. It could be positive, negative, just a tiny little niche thing that you've always thought and never been able to say, or a proper mainstream, and you just want to use this opportunity to launch a defence of David Moyes. So, Steve, the floor is yours.
I'm not going to defend David Moyes, but I'm also not of the same opinion I was of him last year. But I think if I'm given the floor, I'll go with, like, to me, what it is to be a West Ham fan, which can get kind of misconstrued, whether it's by pundits or what you should need to do and what's important. I think being a West Ham fan, you don't need to win every week. You don't need to play the best football all of the time, but you need to have players that will try and play the best football as often as they can, and players that will work hard. And I get annoyed when Alvarez and Kufau, they join and they stand out because they're working hard. That should be a bare minimum. Like every single player should work hard. You shouldn't get a gold star for running around with energy and trying to make a tackle. That is a bare minimum. So I get annoyed when they stand out because I feel that should be a given. But we don't need to be in Europe every year. We're in it and we love it and it's brilliant. I want it to continue as much as possible. But being a West Ham fan is not about being in the top 6 every year. It's not about winning every week. It's about going to the game, enjoying it, feeling like it's a family, with a good atmosphere, playing good football as often as we can. If you give me, I'll take losing to Brighton every game of the season. If we can beat Arsenal at one time, if we can beat Spurs, if we can beat Chelsea, you give me those away days, you give me a decent cup run, and you give me a team that is identifiable, good personalities, play the right way when they can, work hard, I'm happy. I don't need to see grown men lift trophies. I love Prague, it was amazing. But if we won the League Cup, brilliant. It's not what I grew up demanding and needing. And when you say players, they need to win something to have their career validated, why? Like, does Harry Kane need to win a trophy? Does everyone have to see a grown man go woohoo for him to have a good career? No, it's all rubbish. It's just what people say. And I don't think any of that really does apply to West Ham fans. Prague was amazing, but if we lost in Prague, I still would have had the best time of my life. It was a great trip. And I think for us, that's what being a West Ham fan is, not winning necessarily every week and not lifting trophies. It's just being part of that West Ham culture, I guess.
Steve, do you think a lot of that is being lost in what we're now seeing as that almost? I heard Will coin this phrase for the first time last week, was new era West Ham fans. In that now that it means
fans.
It could be that, but it almost. I mean, I noticed it last year when I think it was a guest that we had on. I think it was an opposition view guest. Jake for the Leicester one said that if West Ham won the Conference League, it would have meant that they'd have had a better season than Arsenal, who didn't win anything at all. Now, I tend to agree with him on that, but a lot of fans were like, no, because finishing the top 4, they got into the Champions League. Like, how do you now gauge success for football clubs if, like you say, like winning a trophy really isn't, we're great, we've won one finally the first time in our lifetime, but for you, it's like, well, that's not really what I grew up demanding. So yeah, it was great, but if we didn't win it, it would still have been fine. Like, is the dynamic of football fans and West Ham fans changing? Well, no, exactly.
Yeah,
but that was
Arsenal fans do.
Well, Arsenal fans do, yeah.
Yeah.
I only really care about us, right? And if we can get to a final and have a cup run, winning it is not the be all and end all. I would have rather gone out to the Nou Camp when when it looked like we might have got Barca. Yeah. I'd rather we'd gone to Barcelona and lost at the Nou Camp than go to the Europa League final and win it. The only caveat is we would have been in the Champions League, so I'll take that aside. But if there was no Champions League at stake, do you want to go to a final and win, or do you want to go to the Nou Camp? As a West Ham fan, I've never been to the Nou Camp in my life. I'll take the Nou Camp every day of the week. So it's more about the experiences. Getting to a final was brilliant. I don't think we expect to win them. Thankfully, we won a couple of playoff finals. They're the ones that I think has meant the most to me as a West Ham fan. Losing that one was terrible, and I'd rather win a playoff final over any game in football, because the thought of being in the Championship again is hell on earth. But I think there's this thing about, I guess it's always been the way, who's had a better season? We're better than you. You're better than this. I had a Fulham fan going, why would Paulinho want to join West Ham? I'm like, of course he bloody would. But also, like, who's had a better season, West Ham or Arsenal? Well, Arsenal finished second and we finished 15th. I'm sure they had a better season, but we also had a better day out than they did all year. So it doesn't really matter, does it? Like,
yeah.
None of it matters, Steve. Look, I don't want to get too existential, but none of this matters. Like, we're sitting over a computer talking to each other about 11 blokes running around. None of it matters.
Yeah.
But what would you say then? Because everything you said there, and I've noticed it before when we've met in person. Me and you think very, very similarly about what it is to be, I wouldn't say a football fan, but a West Ham fan in particular, because that's my hopes for this season's Europa League, right? Because I just sort of think, you know what, we've got half a chance of this. We've got half a chance of, we've got a sniff at this. But it's the same every year when the cup draws are made. I just sort of I want experiences, because being West Ham, if your West Ham experience is directly linked to the success of West Ham, you'll be perennially miserable. Like,
then why would you ever go to the game, right? Just check the result.
What's that?
Why would you ever go to a game? Just check the result. We won 1-0. Brilliant. Yeah. All I care about is how we get on. I think the one thing we've lacked in Europe since we've been there is a massive stadium and a massive team. I'd rather go into the Europa League and get knocked out by a giant. I want to go to the Bernabeu, the San Siro, the Nou Camp. I don't want to get knocked out by Frankfurt. And I think they're the experiences I'll remember for the rest of my life more than some of the others.
But sorry, I've got 2 points to make. I will still remember Frankfurt for the rest of my life, as I will Lyon. One thing I would say is sort of, I think it comes from the same place to what you said. I enjoyed Lyon away more than I did Prague. That was a little bit linked to the fact that I thought Bowen was offside as he was running through. So I basically faux celebrated because I was like, that's going to get flagged offside because I was pretty certain. But what would you say to people, right, who just listen to what you said about you'd rather the experiences or rather the the experience against Barcelona? What would you say? Because I've had this said to me before and I'm shifting with my thought process on it now. What would you say to people who go, well, that's just a small club mentality, small club fan mentality you've got there, Steve?
They don't need to agree with me. I go on what I enjoy. I'm not telling them they have to think it. But if I enjoy my days out, that keeps me happy. Everyone's entitled. If they'd rather see West Ham win 1-0 every game and whatever, that's great for them. We don't all have to think the same, but I will remember those experiences that I've had to watch every other friend at school growing up with, playing AC Milan, playing these teams. What's the point in going into Europe? To win every year or to go and have those experiences? And who knows, we might beat Barca. We could have potentially that year. They weren't great then.
Frankfurt did, didn't they? Frankfurt did.
Yeah. So Rangers beat Dortmund. I want to go to Dortmund Stadium. If they want to win, I don't think many of those people, sorry guys, go to games very often. They're happy just watching it and seeing what the result is. Go overland and see and tell us what's important.
James, thoughts?
I think fans. I don't disagree with anything that Steve just said. I think that there can be a middle ground, and I think I kind of fall into that middle ground a little bit where, I want the experiences.
So beige, aren't you?
And no, but I also want the experiences. I've gutted that we couldn't go to the Nou Camp, just like you. But also at the same time, desperately wanted us to win that Conference League last year. It was like I can't bear the thought of us losing this game. We finally got there.
I think when you're in a final, it's different, right? But if someone said to us in the first knockout round of the Europa League game, but would you rather have Lyon or Barca? I think every fan would have said Barca, even if we get.
I get that, yeah. I feel like I kind of do fall on the fence a little bit. Whereas, a lot of my time supporting West Ham, same as everyone really over the last 20, 30 years, it hasn't been about winning football matches, is it?
No.
Because to be fair, we've not won many up until about 3 years ago, barring the odd good season under Slaven Bilic. But at the same time, you still crave that success, because I said it last year, like going and winning a European trophy, growing up, that wasn't for me. That was for my mates who supported Chelsea, Man United, and Liverpool, and all the rest of it. And suddenly I'm experiencing that, and I'm going, wow, like actually, I want more of this. I want more. I want more of it this season. I want us to go far in the League Cup, because I think it's a good opportunity for us to win. And then we could draw Arsenal, which is just typical. But so I care about winning, and I care about winning silverware. I think that's the most important thing. But I also, if we don't, I'm fine with it. If you know what I mean. I'm fine with it.
Can I just interject quickly and ask? Because I think that's a healthy way to be, James. But just quickly to both of you, really, when you were in the final, we're playing Fiorentina. Did you, both of you, but Jonesy first, did you want us to win the game because for the glory and for that moment of euphoria, or did you want us to win it because it would mean we were in the Europa League next season, and then there's this whole smorgasbord of opportunities for these repeated experiences that all three of us have shared together, right? We were all at, we've had beers in squares in the sun in Lyon going, does life get better than this together, right? That's why I wanted to win the Conference League, because I was like, now we've got a whole nother season of being able to go, do you fancy Olympiacos away? And we'll go and do that in Athens, or we might get through and then we might get Barcelona. I'm just wondering which, because I think you're perhaps more the glory on the day, Jonesy, where I was like, I want to win this so we can go again.
My my initial feeling on that day was glory. I'd grown up desperately wanting to see West Ham win a trophy. I was gutted in 2006 when we lost the FA Cup final, and it was almost like this. I want to be able to say I've seen West Ham win silverware in my lifetime, and that silverware cannot include the Intertoto Cup or two-player finals. Like, has to be an actual
the Betway Cup
or a Betway Cup. As much as that is glamorous, no, it has to be an actual credible piece of silverware. And I always thought that would probably be an FA Cup or a League Cup in my lifetime, not a European trophy, which is why I went into that game going, I'm here for the glory, and anything that comes after winning that is just a byproduct of the glory. It's like, I'll think about that after. All I care about is that silverware, so I can one day die a happy man and say I witnessed West Ham win silverware. I've done that
Steve?
now.
I just didn't want to lose. I didn't really have a thought process on why. But if you said to me, would you rather next year you win the Conference League but you don't get Europe, or you finish 6th, I think I'll probably take finishing 6th, because I enjoy the experiences that come with it. It was great to win, but it was great. The part of winning was just the feeling amongst the fans in the stadium together. That was incredible. Yeah. I didn't put pressure on us to win, though. I just didn't want us to lose. But if we win the League Cup or we don't win the League Cup, I don't care. Like, it's not going to change my life if we do or not. I think there's certain individual games that don't have to be a final. The last game at Upton Park, I didn't care how we played. I just wanted to win that game for some reason. That and the playoff finals have been the 3-4 standout moments of my life. I was like, I really want us to win today. And then whenever we play Arsenal this year, I just really want to win that. I don't care how bad we play. But if we can knock them out of the cup,
I've never had someone convince me before, say the words and I immediately believe them. None of this really matters, and go, yeah, he's right. Mere seconds after giving the most impassioned speech full of hatred about a club and a set of fans in history. You've got quite a talent there, Steve, I must admit. But listen, mate, look, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on the show. I sort of knew when we started doing this season, you're one of the names we've got on the list early doors. I'll be honest, mainly because every time I've met you, you tend to agree with me on stuff. But primarily because I know, you're how passionate you are about supporting West Ham, and you've always gone and you still do, and you put the hard yards in. And I think that, I've always sort of got respect for fans who do that sort of stuff. Just given what you've said up until now, one last question before we let you go and say goodbye for another week. I've been asking people what success looks like for them this season, but given what you've said, I think, for what do you want, and what would a successful period of supporting West Ham look like for you, maybe this season, but then a little bit more beyond that as well? What are your sort of hopes for the future West Ham wise?
If we can somehow get into any European competition, keep the ball rolling, I think it helps us keep better players. It helps us bring better players in, and it gives me the experiences I've been waiting for at an age where I can actually enjoy them, rather than being 6 years old to the Intertoto Cup or whatever it was. So yeah, anything that is Europe, and anything that is a couple of good wins. But I still think Europe, Conference League, whatever league, I think that has to be a good season. Other than that, if we don't, let's get top 10. Let's kind of really button down and make sure we've got something sustainable, not like a Leicester that drops off. There's a lot of competition now. Brighton, Villa, Newcastle, they're going to be fighting with us. So let's just keep pace with everyone and try and get Europe. I'll be fine with that, and beat Arsenal.
Absolutely brilliant. Jonesy, what a Claret Blue View that was.
Oh, I knew he wouldn't let me down.
There we go.
Sensational stuff. Listen, Steve, it's been absolutely great having you on. Delighted that, probably haven't met you for the first time 2 to 3 years ago. I can now refer to you as something other than Jonesy's brother's mate, Steve, and now I know your surname. So good news on that front. Really appreciate you coming on the show for the first time. Definitely keen to get you back on later in the season. Fingers crossed for a few more. of the away trips. That was the Claret Blue View. Oh, God, I'm Jonesy. I'm going to have to keep practicing that one. I rush into it. That's
especially given you've named it after yourself as well.
I know. Yeah. But right. I was literally going to do the little add-on there, add your name on because you've joined me this week, but I can't even get the words out. So I need to find something better. But that was the Claret and Blue View with Will Pugh. And this week, James Jones. And, of course, our guest, Steve Hart. Steve, absolutely brilliant having you on.